turning it on. Good. Yeah.
Kia ora tātou and welcome back to our council meeting. We have next on our agenda the renaming of the old State Highway 1. I realise there's quite a lot of interest in this and we've had a number of public speakers. However, I'm of a mind to table this report until the meeting of the 24th of June. We've had quite a lot of questions around what we are and aren't allowed to do today, how it fits with our policies, whether or not this should indeed be a community board decision. And we've had quite a lot of feedback from the public over the past couple of weeks and today that I think we feel like we need a little bit more time to consider. And we happen to have a meeting coming up quite shortly, though. I'm determined, though, that we will make a decision around this on the 24th because it's been kicking around for so long. 26th of June. My apologies, the 26th of June. It's been kicking around for quite a long time. So on that day, we will make a decision. I'm sincerely hoping. So, so with that, I will move that we table the report on 10.1 on the renaming of the old State Highway 1 to be considered at the council meeting on the 26th of June. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanford, as it's a procedural motion, there's no debate. I'll put it to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thanks so much to those who presented on it today. That actually gives us time to consider properly what you've said today and then come to a decision. Thank you. So I'm going to move the Kapiti Health Advisory Group next because we have some members here who have been patiently waiting. So this is item 10.5, the Kapiti Health Advisory Group's compelling case for a polyclinic for Kapiti. We've been looking forward to this coming. It's been a while in the making, so thank you so much for coming today. We'll just wait for some microphones and then we'll let you... How do we want to do this, staff? So our Kapiti Health Advisory Group people are going to introduce staff. Maybe I'll pass over to Chris and she can guide us through this report. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you. It's with pleasure today that we welcome our Kapiti Health Advisory Group to the table, and we will hand over to them shortly. Today we have tabled a staff-based report, which is bringing to your attention a conversation that I'm sure you're well familiar with. As our Kapiti Health Advisory Group have engaged with all community boards, this opportunity, the compelling case, has been discussed in the Social Sustainability Committee and it has been supported. And today we're coming to you with our Kapiti Health Advisory Group, really as a delegated advisory group, seeking your support for the next steps. So Gina is with me here today. We've provided a bit of an overview and some advice around what we've seen in the compelling case. I think you will see that it's very supportive of next steps, and it outlines some of the feedback that we've received and how how the Kapiti Health Advisory Group has considered that and incorporated some additional points of feedback. I will hand over to Gina briefly to make some comments, and then we'll hand over to our Kapiti Health Advisory Group. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I think I'll just start by highlighting that this is a piece of work that's been done by a volunteer group in the Kapiti Health Advisory Group, and they've done a fantastic job of outlining the argument in support of taking this approach, and noting that there has been generally very strong public support and an existing mandate with the petition that had 22,000 signatures back in 2017-18. As outlined in the paper, this isn't going to be an immediate piece of work. It requires conversation with Health New Zealand. It is something that we expect. KHAG's not proposing that this would be funded by council. This would be funded by Health New Zealand, so it will require some discussion with them. But as our paper, the officer paper highlights, we can see the merit in that case, and for taking forward the first steps towards having that discussion, which we recommend being writing to the Minister of Health, to Health New Zealand, and to local MPs to initiate that discussion on the proposal that it contains. So happy to take the paper as read generally. Happy to take questions. Sandra and Ian, happy to hand over to you for any additional comments you'd like to make to introduce or to go straight to questions.
Thanks, Gina. We'd really like to thank you and Chris and the rest of the team for all of the support we've had to get to this point, and to the council and particularly Martin's team for the support we've had to get here. We think that this considered evidence-based approach is probably the best chance we're going to have to be heard clearly by Health New Zealand, and your support in doing this is something that we really value. So we hope you're going to see your way to approve it today, and we look forward to the process from here on. Ian.
I was just thinking as Chris and Gina were talking that reminded me in a way, a reverse way, of when I was at college and saw a play called Waiting for Godot, French play, very, very philosophical, but one of the take-home messages, of course, the chap Godot, who was the third tramp, never turned up. They were waiting for him. Well, this is by way of contrast. We have turned up. And I said at some of the earlier discussions with the Social Sustainability Committee and also with KHAG that in all these processes there is a beginning, a middle and an end. And the only matter of debate really is the length of the middle. And I think in terms of the many middles I've experienced over the years, this is relatively short, comparatively. However, in saying it's the end, that's not quite true, because it's the wading through treacle we'll have to do with Health New Zealand following. So we're probably about a tenth of the way through of the entirety of the process of getting something agreed about a pathway to go down to expand the services along the lines I've been outlined. But I'd also like to reiterate too Sandra's appreciation for the support from Council and also Councillor Martin, Kathy, and it's been very, very helpful, and staff and Gina in particular, including lugging that heavy microphone around the public meetings. I thought you deserved more of the more than the half-day extra you got from that. I hope you're noticing that, Chief Executive. That's all the union lobbying I'll do on this occasion. But happy for any questions.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you're not referring to Waiting for Godot in terms of the polyclinic itself. So, Councillor Coe, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So, yeah, thanks for all the hard work that's gone into this. It's great to see this come to the table. I just wondered, under recommendation D there, we've got D.1.1 and 1.2 about working with Health New Zealand. It's just not clear to me, and when you talk about walking through treacle, what is the appetite from Health New Zealand for entering into a joint memorandum and following through on these recommendations? Do we have a feel for that?
Yes, when I said wading through treacle, I should have said wading through very thick treacle.
Yeah.
Look, what I would say that we have socialised them. The only difficulty has been is that you'll be aware from the general media coverage, etc., that Health New Zealand is arguably the most continually restructured organisation of a public authority that I'm certainly aware of. So we socialise amongst some, and then we go to reaffirm it or continue it, and it's different people. However, that is at a fairly high level, and all the responses, and we've not sought a commitment from them because that would be too early. We haven't got our ducks lined up, not then anyway. But there is a strong interest at a reasonably high level within Health New Zealand, Te Whātua Ora, on the concept. It has merit. It's alluded to in the council's paper, for the staff's paper on this too, but there's a national infrastructure report, or rather a plan from the Minister of Health. Now, on the one hand, it's a plan that has something missing in it, a plan. On the other hand, there's a useful comment which is highlighted in the council staff's report about precisely pretty much what we're talking about in terms of health facilities short of a 24/7 acute hospital, below that, that can actually, among other things, provide more timely care, closer to home, relatively speaking, and I think that, and also relieving the pressure on public hospitals. So I think those sort of dynamics are all positive. All the socialisation amongst the people that we're talking to, as I say, quite senior, has been positive. So I think it won't be Health New Zealand will not be the problem so much. It'll be what's the environment in which they are operating that may be the bigger challenge.
All right, and the other question I have is, are you getting assistance from our local MP on this?
We've had both local MPs. We've had a strong, good support, very good support from both.
All right, thank you.
So I just wanted to make a note from a council perspective that we've been building a relationship with Health New Zealand and other key parties in our health system, and we're really getting positive engagement, support and interest to the needs in our district. I take on board Ian's points about there's a wider context that we're operating in. I believe we've got a really positive start to this discussion. So this opportunity falls, I think, into, I'm going to say, relationship with parties who are interested in talking about how do we solve the current problems we have in our community. So we would be wanting to put thanks across the table to Health New Zealand in particular, who've already agreed to meet with us to take a second step around how we take it forward.
Councillor Warwick.
I've got a comment rather than a question, so shall I save it?
Yeah, save it. Yep. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks for this. It's fantastic work. I note that we have among us today Horizons Regional Councillor Sam Ferguson. Just acknowledging that Sam's there, and Sam is the chair of the Transport Committee for Horizons. And so in the paper, one of the, obviously in discussions through Martin's committee, some key considerations have been around transport and the fact that Ōtaki is part of Kapiti, but in a health sense it's kind of is and it isn't at the same time. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the discussions with health, how much have we been involving the northern part? Or are we involving the northern part, or are we just focusing on, say, Peka Peka South, or...
If I may just make a comment, if you're wanting, I guess, to consider that in terms of the compelling case in front of you, I think in the document it talks about where we're at in terms of our focus. More generally though, the work we have underway across the district is considering effectively the boundaries that we have to operate in, which means we go south and north, and we are engaged in both spaces. So there is work underway with Ōtaki in particular, not necessarily specifically on the compelling case, but in other areas. So they have things that they're hopeful that we can progress with them, and we are actively engaged, and with Health New Zealand, actually Think Aurora, our PHO and others. So this is by no means the only thing that's underway in our health space. So this just happens to be something that's in the work program that has come to decision.
and just completely endorsing the evidence-based approach, although evidence doesn't always, we're living in an environment of newspeak, so good luck with that.
Councillor Spires.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, with respect to you first, I do have an amendment to one of the recommendations. But I'd just like to ask that our recommendation says right to Te Whatu Ora, etc. So you would be happy if we included you in my amendment is to actually bring the Minister of Health, Simeon Brown, up to Kapiti Coast for a discussion. So you'd be happy with that if we met?
Could I just suggest, I don't think there's any problem with seeking to invite the Minister, but I just wonder whether it's better as a separate resolution rather than amending the existing resolutions that are there. The most vital thing that we do at the moment is start engaging directly with Health New Zealand. I think the political context is obviously important. And there are other things that we can pursue politically as well, like, for example, I think there's the possibility of both MPs, despite different parties, they have a shared view on what we're proposing for a joint statement from them, for example. But I think that my advice would be as a separate resolution, additional, rather than as part of amending the resolutions that are in front of you now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it needs to be a resolution. I will take that on board and I will send an invitation to the Minister.
Okay.
Yeah.
The recommendation says right to, but we need to write and invite them up. So.
I'll do that.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Mayor.
that's
Great.
fine.
Thank
You
you.
can trust me. Councillor Cooper?
I just had thank you. I just had a question around recommendation D.1.1, or should that wait? Or is it's a question to staff? Because
Just
it's our
ask it.
recommendation.
Yep, just ask it.
So ask it now? Okay, great. Just in relation to cost to the council, I see that there's no cost to the council, but the recommendation is to enter into a joint memorandum of agreement to incrementally expand services at the Kapiti Health Centre, ... So am I right to go, the memorandum of understanding will stipulate that there's no cost? Because that sort of says that it's a joint cost or a joint going forward, and I know that's probably not what you wanted.
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I think we wanted to signal to you today that obviously delivering health services and in terms of primary, secondary or tertiary health services is not a function of council. The services that would and are proposed to be in the polyclinic are ones that we do not pay for and we do not deliver. However, council is considered to be, as part of local government, a critical component of community, and it's that relationship that we're wanting to work on with Health New Zealand to make this a priority for our community. Obviously, our Kapiti Health Advisory Group is stepping into that space with us. That before we signed an MOU of any kind, it would have always come back through our usual process. So we're not asking to commit any funds from council towards anything. That's our proposal. If there was any different views, they'd be coming back to this table, but I can confirm that for you.
Yep. So just to confirm that D.1 doesn't infer that we will have some cost at some point going forward. That would come back to the table. Correct. Okay, thank you.
Very good to have that clarified. I'll go to
Can I?
Rawiri
Oh,
online.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Did you have a further response? And then I'll come to you, Rawiri, if that's okay.
Well, just briefly, in relation to your question, I spoke at each of the 5 community board meetings and each of the 5 public meetings in those same areas. And in all of those meetings, if it wasn't the first thing I said, it was the second. This is not going to be a cost to KCDC. And I don't think anything should be taken in the memorandum to suggest anything otherwise. And if it ever was attempted to worm through its way through, there's plenty of ways of stopping that.
Thank you. I'll go to Rawiri now. If you just want to unmute, there we are.
Yeah, kia ora.
Can hear you.
Kōrua. Yeah, look, I've got a reference. It starts off with you have a section in your memorandum there of referencing mana whenua, and you have a statement at the end. You note that there hasn't been a lot of consultation in that space. And you note at the end of council, if the council vote to take forward recommendation of compelling case, officers note further discussions with iwi partners will be required. Then I go back up to D.1.2, and there it's got the implementation of the memorandum of agreement will be co-designed and planned between Health New Zealand and KCDC. So, as you note, under mana whenua, we have health providers. We have Horotupai in this space. The Patu Ora Putia is somewhat challenged. There's a bit of a habit, the current regime, to take from one pile to give the other. So there's that tension, but also that co-designed and planned between just two partners, which is Te Whatu Ora or Health New Zealand and the council. Where do mana whenua and our health providers come into that co-design and planning for this, so that we are joined up, if you like?
I'm happy to take that question, and I think that's really important to clarify. Firstly, I'll say today, recommendation D, seeking support, relates to the compelling case itself. So that comes from the compelling case. The comments in our paper in the section around mana whenua and iwi and further engagement as part of those next steps. So in getting, I think, the compelling case to where it's at, I think it's an acknowledgement that a lot of engagement has occurred, but it is not complete. And we know that next steps need to make sure that we engage in and across the local health system and services we have. So to that end, not with the compelling case, but outside of that, at the moment we are in the process of establishing a health hui with key parties from north and south in our district. That does include all commissioning bodies, I'll call them, and key players of health services to come together around a health strategy to be able to consider things like the compelling case and its next steps forward. So there will be opportunity for further discussion and engagement. I think Ian mentioned the journey we're on. For the compelling case, I think yes, we're maybe at the midpoint. I would suggest from a council perspective, we're really at the starting gate of some of the discussions we're having as a local system. And so this will be one of the first things I think that's a priority for us all to be able to then join in and work together around, as well as some other things. So I wanted to be very careful today to say this is one of several initiatives underway, and we have had some feedback from across the district, really some concerns that people didn't want everyone to think this is the only thing happening. So over time we will be bringing some other important opportunities, some of which are in Otaki, so that we can make sure that across the whole district we are recognising needs and supporting good initiatives that really will make a change to ensure that our needs and services are appropriately supported. I hope that answers the question, Rawiri. Effectively, we're intending to make sure we wrap back round and that there is that co-design opportunity.
If it's helpful, Rawiri, I've forwarded some suggestions through for some extra noting recommendations which pull some of those comments from officers that are kind of peppered throughout the report up into the noting recommendations. Could we have those on the screen, please? And that might address your concern. I mean, ideally, you'd want iwi in D.1.2, but maybe there's a conversation that needs to happen first, and the noting recommendation might formalise that. So that might help. We'll just pull those up. So you'll see I've put a few extra noting recommendations under C. They're directly pulled from the report, so I haven't pulled them out of a hat. They're just things that the officers have recommended throughout the report, and it's just a matter of pulling them to the top and formalising them. So that might be of assistance. I'll go back to you now, Rawiri, for some further comment to see if your question's been answered.
It's a bit hard to read.
Look, I think it has. I see those notes and it makes me more comfortable, and I hear that commitment to that co-design, which is important. So, yeah, kia ora for your answers there and response.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Halliday.
I was just going to move, Madam Chair, but if you're making amendments, I'm picking you're going to move, so I'll be happy to second.
If you're happy to accept the amendments,
Happy to accept the amendments.
yeah, then you can move them with the amendments if you're comfortable
Quite
doing
happy
that.
to do that.
Are there any further questions before we go to moving the recommendations? Councillor Pravanov?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thank you
Hang
for
on,
coming along
just
to
wait.
speak.
Yep. you're good
Through
to
the
go.
chair, thank you for coming along to speak today. One thing that I'm, I agree with, happy to support these recommendations, but there's nothing there about timeframes. There's no discussion about timeframes, and I'm just wondering whether something it can be, we can have some update, we have some idea about those, and whether that's important to actually have a timeframe to try and work to.
If I may note, we are actively, I think, engaged with Health New Zealand and others looking to schedule things. Some of the conversation that we've had in the Social Sustainability Committee and with the chair is just the importance of the journey and relationships in the health space. And our approach has been to take the time to make sure that we've had the right engagement and the right discussions, rather than this being a time-constrained process. So what we could commit to, and we will anyway because it's part of the work program, is the return actions in the work program that come to the Social Sustainability Committee on a regular basis at any rate. We will be, following your decisions today, progressing to next steps, and we can come back to close the loop. But I'm very reflective that we are reliant on other parties' availability, and that's not in reference to ministers, but just in terms of health system colleagues, I'll call them. So as soon as we've got some clarity around that, we can definitely close the loop and come back. I wouldn't want to try and commit to something we're not able to meet otherwise.
Thank you. I understand having deadlines is difficult, but it's good to know. I accept what you're saying, and so it would be great to go back to the Social Sustainability Committee.
Alexandra has a comment as well.
Yes, I disagree 100% with what Chris was saying, but just to note that one of the key agenda items on our next meeting is planning out those next steps. Assuming we have the approval today, what are the next things we need to put in place? So that will be how we'll go about that.
Very good. I think we're ready to move. So, Councillor
I
Halliday.
might just ask for a slight change to one word, and it's actually on D. Rather than support progressing, just use the word support progress towards. No? That's what it says, progress.
Yeah, just take out. That makes it a little bit
Just
less
grammatically.
clunky, doesn't
That's
it?
all.
So moved by Councillor Halliday. Who would like to second this? Councillor Spires.
Very
Right of
appropriate.
introduction.
I would, and I'd like to reserve the right of response as well,
Absolutely.
because I'm not going to go too heavy on this to the start, but I'd just like to wind it up on the tail end. But first of all, just want to thank the Kapiti Health Advisory Group. This, to me, is the result of true community partnership with regards to the result that we're getting, and I just want to thank you for the countless hours that we've all put in to progressing this to where it's at. It's great. I talked about council being community builders, and that's part of what we do. It's part of that invisible part of almost of what we do, considering a lot of focus on what's called our core business. That's a very hard thing to define. It's not just bricks and mortars, it's about building communities, because if we don't do it, who does? Certainly not this government, in my opinion. Look, we've got to where we've got. Absolutely fantastic. This has been socialised. Everyone knows about it. We've had I'm going to say 99.9% positive response. One person pushed back against this out of the entire district as such. And it's going to be interesting to see whether that comes up at elections. But so this couldn't be more thoroughly socialised locally, following on from a 22,000 person petition. It's just taken us a while to legitimise the group so that they can actually stop the wheels spinning and get them moving forward. And then very quickly, as you pointed out, Ian, where that fast part, which normally is quite long, should have been quite compact because of that. But what we're doing here is setting the foundations for the next step. As such, because as we learnt with the, and I use this comparison, as we used with the housing process, we identified that there were issues in our district in this space, but we had to prove that to central government. And what we're doing here is we're building the foundation of proving that and having that information behind us so that when we take our cases to central government, there are solid arguments there. And I do note that we've got the government funding at the moment for urgent care. It's been quite significant, and I'm hoping we can chip into that. But it also means there's a mindset there that this is an area that needs to be addressed. And as you've been pointed out in the report, we are the district in the country, the furthest away from the hospital with the highest population. It's not good enough. It needs to change, and people have got to start paying attention to that change because we're growing. We're a high growth district. As Councillor Cooper just mentioned before, Wellington Hospital had 110%. This helps relieve that problem. Rather than spending billions down there, you can spend a small amount up here in comparison and take a big chunk of pressure off that process. So much for keeping it short. But I'll just leave it at that for the moment. I'm sure there's some other people who've got some things to say, and I'll wrap up on the tail end of it.
Councillor Warwick. I just wanted to say I have been part of the CAG meetings. I don't think I'm officially a committee member, but I have been invited, which has been very nice. And just to speak in regard to Otaki, and not for the services that are in Otaki, but what I have gathered from what has been said. The thing is that, as Rawiri said, the tension is funding, and for Otaki, as much as we think we're one big health system now, we're not. We're still DHBs, and our specialists and stuff and funding comes from Mid-Central in Otaki. So there is a tension there, but I just want to acknowledge that at no point when I've been around the table has Otaki been not acknowledged or thought about. That staff, Chris and Gina, have really gone out of their way to go down there and engage, because if a service is in Kapiti, it may not get funded in Otaki, and that's the tension. We still have a lack of ability to get down here in some cases, and we all know that local health, delivered locally, has better outcomes. So, and I think we're very lucky to have two staff members who have been in the pit of central government and have brought so much knowledge about reaching into those central government departments, and that's huge. But mainly acknowledging that Otaki has been acknowledged there as something that has to come in itself, and that it hasn't been forgotten. So thank you, and thank you for all your hard work. It's been amazing.
Councillor Spires.
Thank you. I apologise, Madam Mayor, but I got a bit toey this morning when I heard on the radio that more funding is going into Wellington's emergency department with 126 more beds. And I thought, yeah, that's probably for Kapiti people. And so I was just getting a bit toey around, where's our access to services up here? We need more up here in Kapiti. So I got a bit toey. So thank you. Yeah, thanks heaps to KHAG for keeping going. And but we need some action up here. If they've got money to spend in Wellington, they've got money to spend up here. So thank you, Chris and Gina, for keeping on going. So we need to see some action up here in Kapiti. They've got money for Wellington. They've got money for Kapiti. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'd also want to acknowledge the value of our human resources sitting at the end of the table there. Yeah, Chris and Gina, and your understanding of how the central government operates. You know, that's a really valuable tool. But I'm a big fan of naming names. So in terms of KHAG and where you've got to, I've got Sandra and Ian here, but I also just wanted to acknowledge Jackie Cumming and Don Hunn and Graham Scott and Diana Ponsford and Janet Dean, and there have been other people who had. It's a largely thankless task, as you will probably know, right? But this has been a long time coming, right? So it's fantastic that it's arrived, and congratulations to all of those people who have been involved. Kathy's at a political level has been sort of pushing this barrow for a long time, and congratulations to Martin and his committee as well. I think this polyclinic idea is an incredibly important thing, particularly in light of the current and the expected growth in Kapiti, and the number of times that we have seen really significant developments come in here and talk about their massive developments with no health provisions whatsoever. Including they want to grow our population massively without contributing anything towards health resource. So this is going to be increasingly important. I just would acknowledge also within iwi there are some superb health initiatives that are happening. Ngāti Toa have got some wonderful examples. In Otaki there are some examples up there as well. And I take Rawari's point. I think Connect, it's not just a matter of consulting, but also using, again, those resources and those skills and that talent and what's been achieved. And I think the more we can sort of, wrap around all of those things, the greater the value will be. But just again, to you guys for front-footing this, just absolutely fantastic.
Kim, sorry.
Kia ora. I just want to tautoko Shelley's comments around and bringing it to the table that the fear is we all know that there's limited resource, and that once again that resource will go to Paraparaumu as opposed to Otaki. So that's a real fear because, like she said, Otaki has historically been missed because it just sits in the middle there. To no fault of anyone sitting around this table. And it's compounded probably by that Otaki has the greatest need right now, which is why you've seen another doctors pop up there to provide, to take the overflow. So I'm happy that we've got these amendments. That's great. But when I think about the word consultation, I'd like us to think about consultation as kotahitanga, because that's when we get what Nigel's talking about. We actually just sit together and we figure out what's best for everyone so that everyone can act in their own tino rangatiratanga and their own autonomy, but we can focus on the greater outcome so that whatever we're doing collectively tends towards that greater outcome, which I think is absolutely what you're trying to do. So just bearing that in mind, so I'm glad to see those amendments, but we do need to have increased health services in Kapiti, and that includes the whole of Kapiti. So, kia ora.
Councillor Handford.
Yeah, kia ora, korua. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Sandra. And to the rest of the team as well. I agree with what everyone else has said, so I won't repeat their comments. But the one thing I wanted to highlight, I guess, as, in addition to the comments that have already been made, is just a massive mihi to you both and the rest of the team for all of the consultation that you did with the community that has landed us with these recommendations. I feel like to make yourself available on evening nights, several nights a week, to be going around to all of the different, not only community boards but holding public meetings, I think that just really gives like another layer of weight to what we have in front of us on the table, and that's just thanks to the enormous amount of hours that you've poured into this, really from a place of love and care for the community. So just thank you for the heart that you do this work with and the enormous amount of energy that you've given it so far, and that I guess we hope you'll continue giving to it, because as has been mentioned, you're a real asset, and the wealth of knowledge that's within the Kapiti Health Advisory Group is really appreciated. So I just wanted to say thanks for all of the community conversation that you've helped to activate around this.
Yeah, really, talk all the comments around the table and the congratulations on the huge amount of work that's gone into this. And Nigel helpfully gave a list of names, so I don't have to. But I'd like to add another name from the past to that list, and that's Sue Amorali. And the people who surrounded her at that time who did the petition, which kind of kick-started all of this in the Kapiti Health Advisory Group. And I think it's important to remember that that happened, that almost everybody in Kapiti signed a petition. And it's really good to be reminded of that. But the kind of qualitative engagement that you've done is equally valuable, because you get people's comments, you get their support, and you get that more nuanced kind of support, and also for something that's achievable and tangible, which I think is just so powerful. And your stickability with the Kapiti Health Advisory Group, it's been, you know, a rough journey, you know, navigating the torrid waters of localities when everything became so uncertain and so just confusing, and just sticking through that time and coming out the other end when at the beginning of the term we worked on the solid terms of reference, and I'd like to acknowledge staff's support with that too, and solidifying the group so that it's able to report so effectively to Martin's committee. Martin, your support of this kaupapa has just been phenomenal, so thank you for the work that you've done. And so I'll pass back to you for your right of reply.
Certainly, thank you very much. Appreciate the words, but it's a reflection of all the work we do. That's what we do. We put our hands up, and we do this work for our community. We just do it in different ways. Listen to some of the comments this morning. You know, I think people tend to lose sight of that. We aren't here for the detriment of our community. We're here for the positive pathways for our community. I just wanted to acknowledge Rauriwi with regards to it's not consultation, as Kim pointed out, it's kotahitanga, it's partnership. And just want to be very, very assured that that will certainly be a very strong part of this conversation as we move forward. Yeah, look forward to engaging in that space, and the space being made to engage in that space as well. It's going to be much appreciated. Yeah, that's it from me. I've commented in the past, we're community champions, and this is what we do. And I'm very proud of the fact that was given a health portfolio when I knew nothing about health 6 years ago. I've got a hospitality background, and same thing, isn't it? Me? Same thing. Mental health. We look after mental health. And it's been a journey for me. You know, I sat down at a table there originally, and I looked around, and I felt so out of place. The expertise, and I've commented on this before, the expertise around that table was just second to none. It's been a privilege to be able to legitimise or be a part of the process that legitimised the group, because that's been part of the problem. Wheels spinning, talk's cheap. With regard to when there's been plenty of talk, it hasn't been a case of the ideas haven't been there. It's been a case of creating the structure that allows things to be done, because it is in the doing of things, and that is what we are doing here. The timing, I think, seems to be working out very, very well with regards to this perhaps happening sooner rather than later, and that's where our advocacy role comes in. So I guess my undertaking is, I'm back here at the table, I'll be there beside you guys until we get this thing landed, and really, really looking forward to that journey and what it looks like. So thank you for the table support. I hope everyone does support this. Otherwise, I'll come and haunt you. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you so much. We note Councillor Cooper's abstention from that vote. Thank you. Right, we'll move straight on.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I'd like to call a division. When a person abstains, can we call a division?
We don't need to, because his abstention will be noted.
No troubles at all, thank you.
Yeah, it was just the conflict of interest that he identified.
The conflict of interest.
He didn't vote against it.
My apologies, Glenn.
Didn't vote against it.
Yeah, no issue there
He
at all.
identified a conflict of interest because of his connection with PHO, yeah. Great, so we move on to 10.2, adoption of the annual plan. Which is traditionally first on the agenda of the meeting that it appears, but not today.
Sorry, an abstention is the recording of a vote. And so in Glenn's case, he wasn't voting. So it's not an abstention. It's just that he just didn't take part in that at all.
Is it noted in the minutes that so-and-so abstained from voting?
Because
or
an
not?
abstention can be seen as a negative against the motion, that you didn't vote for it. But Councillor Cooper wasn't voting at all. Yeah. Just trying to save his career.
Rather than on the voting, as part of the notes in the paper, it could be noted that he abstained from taking part in the discussion due to a conflict of interest or something like that. We'll make sure it doesn't reflect as a negative, I'm sure. Annual plan. We're on to the annual plan now. Thank you. I'll pass over to Mark and Ian.
Thank you, Your Worship. Morena, everybody. So we're on page 27 of the agenda, adoption of the annual plan. A couple of things to point out. One of our public speakers did correctly identify some casting errors on the access and transport table on page 60 of the attachment. So I do apologise. That is unfortunate. I confirm there is some casting errors. So one of the recommendations of this paper is to delegate to the Mayor and the Chief Executive authority to make minor editorial changes. It is unfortunate. It is a process that has happened. We've had a little bit of time to look into the matter, and we have our financial tables on Microsoft Excel and in Magic, and when you transport that into a design package, if the annual plan, if the published document just had Excel documents, it would look very, very ugly. So it goes into what we call designer style tables, and during that process a couple of lines and a couple of rows have actually got out of sync. So so I'm sorry, that is my error. I should have picked that up. Recognise that we need to change that. I'm pretty confident that page 59, the summary table, those are the numbers that those tables need to reconcile to. It's also disappointing because page 59 is a new page to our annual plan. It talks to the capital budget management. You would have seen it in the most recent performance report. It identifies that we are managing our capital budgets over 3 years. It identifies that we're $10.5 million outside of the 3-year envelope. It identifies how we are monitoring and working on that. And then the tables that follow, page 60 onwards, is a real point of difference. Those tables are reconciliation tables that are showing the reader there is a budget in the long-term plan year 2, and now there's a budget in the annual plan 25-26, and it shows you what's changed, what's been brought forward, what's been deferred, what's been carried over, what's been increased, what additional funding have we got, which means we've got more budget. And those tables are so helpful to people that are trying to reconcile an annual plan budget. So once again, I'm really sorry for that. There is an error. I thank the member of public who pointed it out, and we'll get it fixed. And we'll follow that process through with the Mayor and the Chief Executive just to make sure before we publish on our website and make publicly available, it'll be absolutely correct. Other than that...
So the public, sorry to interrupt, so the public speaker outlined some concerns that there might be flow-on impacts from the error. Are there any flow-on impacts from the error?
I don't believe so, because on page 59, the summary table, we're 100% certain that those are the correct numbers.
Sorry, can I just ask, by the way, because this has been my nighttime reading, obviously, for quite a long time. So when we're talking about page numbers, so in the appendices, unfortunately, they don't marry up. So if you take page 60 of the annual plan, is actually on page 63 of the appendices. So when you're talking about page numbers, are you talking about the page numbers in the document, or are you talking about the page numbers in the actual in the agenda?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm actually referencing the page number of the agenda. So 59, page 59 of the agenda, or it's page 56 of the annual plan.
Yeah, because we'll probably be a few of those as we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Carry on.
Sorry, I may just
Sorry.
pass over to Ian.
Well, I'll really
Interrupted your
just
flow.
just to follow up on what Mark's saying. I mean, and similarly, I apologise that that table obviously should add up on that page. But to give you some confidence, the purpose of this set of pages from page 60 of the agenda onwards is to reconcile and try and provide an understanding, I suppose, of the funding movements around each of the activities. So they're not the core statements which come before, and so I can assure you that the core figures, the $84 million capex number, is one that we know well and is correct. So I'm confident the core numbers are reliable, but clearly there's at least that one page that doesn't, somewhere in the production process, it does not add up properly. So apologies for that.
Right. Do you have anything more to add?
No, Your Worship. We're happy to go to questions.
Questions. Councillor Warwick.
I'm just wondering if whoever else finds that once you've been looking at all these, you get a bit confused about some of the lesses in brackets and some of the mores in brackets, and is there any opportunity to have a 101 for dummies on this? Like where we set it all out and we go through it, because it's just, there's lots of information, and am I the only one? I don't know.
It does take a bit of getting used to. In fact, Mark did a 101 on finances, remember, in the evenings over a period of weeks, and Councillor Halliday and I attended them, and one member of the
pushed
public.
for them.
But yeah, it would be a good thing to do, and yeah, let's start thinking about our financial training for the next triennium, because I think we can do better than we did in the last two triennia, I think. Yeah. Councillor Halliday?
Yes, I have 6 questions. Look, first of all, I just to comment on the format of the report. I found it excellent. I found it very, very easy to read, and I found it. I appreciate what you're saying, Shelley, with regards to once you got your head around the different years and that sort of thing, and what was going on, could consolidate. You know, I found it very, very, very informative, as such. After saying that, actually, 3 of my questions are actually just asking for just some clarity on some of the headings, to be honest, just for my own purpose, to make sure I just got it right as to what they actually signify. The first one, and I'm going to be reading off the agenda, so it's on page 26, on the table there, talks to about halfway down in the applications of operating funding, internal charges and overheads applied. And I note that it's not listed in the long-term plan, but the amount is 1222. Look, I'm just wondering if you could just give me an explanation what that is, as such, and does that figure sort of come in because the reporting structure's changed as such?
Thank you, Councillor. We're on page 26 of the agenda. So it's a funding impact statement. So what's been asked is the line internal charges and overheads applied. It's not in the LTP, but it is showing there for the annual plan. So basically, what it is it's our overheads. It's providing more detail around the financials. So a funding impact statement is a prescribed statement, just like the balance sheet, just like the statement of comprehensive revenue and expense, just like the changes in equity, and just all the interest and the feedback that we've had through the Local Water Done Well program, previous annual plans, annual reports. We did take on board that actually, whilst we have to follow a prescribed format, it might be helpful to give a little bit more detail. So we're trying to provide a little bit more clarity on what the operating costs are, and so that is just breaking down. We're going one step further than the prescribed format. So that is why it's in the annual plan column. Is why it is not in the long-term plan. Because when we did the long-term plan, we did the prescribed format. So we sat down as a team. couple of weeks ago, and we decided actually, well, we wanted to try and provide the reader with as much information as we can. So we've inserted a new line, and what that relates to is our overhead charges. So each activity, we do spread our overhead charges, which is predominantly back office support functions, group manager time spent across the activity. So it's an internal charge, it's an overhead.
Excellent, that's great, thank you for that. And just checking, so say when the next long-term plan comes along, it'll be a very similar sort of thing. There'll be a high-level figure, and then through the annual plan, that'll get broken down a bit more.
Yeah, look, we need to work through that. So our long-term plans are audited, and the auditors expect the format to be as per the prescribed format. So we're hopeful that we can work with the auditors and say, yes, we're doing the prescribed format plus more. It is our intention to keep building on this. So I'm hoping that we can sit down with Ernst & Young and say, we would like to provide more information to our readers, and so we'll do the prescribed format plus more, and hopefully they're in agreement with that. They may not. They may say, no, you need to just do it in the prescribed format in accordance with public benefit entity reporting standards.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. So that comes to my next question on the same page. If you just clarify financial costs as well, please.
Sorry, I don't mean to be answering all the questions. Those are our interest costs.
They are the interest costs. Yes. I thought that might have been. So that's the allocation of the interest costs. That's not the allocation of any capex or anything like that. That's just the operational stuff, is it?
That is the finance costs that are allocated to access and transport. So we allocate them across. It's the interest that we allocate to the activities.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Sorry. Third question. It's at the top of that page, targeted rate. Sorry, one of the things when I did a governance course, it said if sort of figures sort of jump out at it, there's a discrepancy, sort of query them. But targeted rate, I would have thought that we'd have a pretty good idea what our targeted figures are going to be. And I've noticed there's a discrepancy, quite a big discrepancy of about $2.5 million between what the long-term plan said that target rate was going to be versus what the annual plan says it's going to be. And I was just curious to know why. Yeah. Same page. That's just at the top. Second line down. 26.
You might recall
Page 26.
we've talked previously about the review of the way in which we allocate interest across our activities. And so in the LTP, it was done on the basis of total asset value, whereas we've moved now to a debt-based approach, and so which we believe is more appropriate. So if you take access and transport, which is where you can see the effect of it most clearly, in the LTP, because the value of the roading assets is very high, includes land under roads, etc. The asset value is significantly higher than the underlying debt that relates to roading, because land under roads is basically it's a book entry that's been created through revaluations, and then on top of that we have NZTA funding roughly half of our capex. So when you take those things into account, there's a lower level of debt that actually attributes to roading than the asset value, and so that's that's the main reason you see that reduction. We've corrected that for the annual plan.
Okay, that sounds great.
Can I just add to that? You can see the correlation. So the finance costs have gone down, and the targeted rates have gone down. They've both gone in the same direction.
Right, gotcha. Yep, okay, yep. Page 36 of the agenda. It's a similar sort of question. The line that says to improve the level of service, which is, if you're looking at that page, about 4 from the bottom, 4 or 5 from the bottom. Again, it's a similar question. To improve the level of service, we've had a change, 6.8 million to 12.9 million from the long-term plan to the annual plan. And what do we mean by improve the levels of service? That is a term.
Thank you. So this is funding impact statement for water. So the prescribed template requires that you specify what are you doing, what is the capital investment doing? Is it a renewal, which is to replace existing, or is it an upgrade? But it looks for two different classifications. So upgrade is generally a new asset, and it's to meet growth and additional demand, or you're increasing the size of the pipe, or you're improving your levels of service. So it's a requirement that we have to do. We have to basically say, where we're doing an upgrade, is it responding to growth, or are you actually improving your levels of service? And it depends on what the activity is. So it is again, it's one of those prescribed formats that we have to do. And in this particular one, we've identified that there is just under $13 million of new CapEx spend that is actually relating to improving the level of service.
And would it be fair to say that because of the 3-year bracket that we've got now for spreading our finance, we perhaps brought something forward? That's perhaps why it's increased?
No, we're actually just saying that level of spend is not related to pure growth. It's just to keep the efficiency of our network going.
In that case, I was just quite surprised at the significant increase. The difference in the two is quite significant, as in like it's double. Is that the case?
Yeah, we might want to pass to Sean. Now we'll go to what
Yes.
spend.
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've moved. I think that relates to the water treatment plant upgrade. So we advanced some work in that space and moved money around and moved money back from year 3 into year 2. And there's also a bit of the Otaki Reservoir on there as well, I think. So that's exactly what it is, that reference to moving money between years. That's why there's a difference between the LTP and the annual plan.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. My next one's on page 48. The agenda, it's under governance. And look, this just might be because of the format that we're using now. I might have just changed some figures around, but I just noted that the long-term plan had a figure and the annual plan has a figure that's significantly less as such. Is that again just the allocation catching up with itself as such? General rate, uniform annual charge, general charge, yes.
Thank you, Councillor. You stumped us.
Oh, it certainly wasn't my intent.
There is a. Can we
Yes,
come
certainly,
back to you
no
on
troubles
that?
at all. I'm sure there's an explanation that's absolutely fine.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. There is. We have taken money out of the overall governance budget. We just need to confirm why and how much.
So a list of questions ahead of time, if they're going to be like that, would be to allow time to find the answers.
Oh, look, I fully appreciate that. We've just been a bit busy this week. I know it's not an excuse. I did give you a heads up that I was doing it, and I appreciate. I will endeavour to do that. I was going to fire it through last night, but I figured that the timing wouldn't make much of a difference. But happy to come back on that.
I'm just a comment from me. I'm pretty sure we'll find it's to do with the allocation of overheads.
I'm pretty sure it
across
more than likely is as well. I was just checking that. And my last one is on page 56. They don't get there if they like. We've got payments to staff and suppliers. I've got two questions here. First of all, could you just define a supplier for me, please? Is a supplier basically an organisation that does work for us, or is it a contractor? I won't preempt the answer. I'm just interested to know what that is.
Yeah, thank you. So look, again, this is the prescribed format, but it's basically third-party vendors. It can be contractors that invoice us. It's also suppliers that we purchase stuff from.
Okay, now that's cool. And I've talked to this previously on many occasions. If it's possible, I would appreciate the staffing and supplying being split out separately. So I'll just make that as a comment and leave that at that. Other than that, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Warwick.
One of my confusions is page 60. We've got nothing to town centre programs. This is just an example. Town centre programs. So there's 2 town centre programs. The second one, there's nothing in the long-term plan. And then in the last column, there's $7 million. And I'm just like, that's kind of So it would be nice if we had a bit more time actually than 1 week to go over this, and maybe then we could get these questions through to you. I don't know, how does that happen? How do you have nothing in a long-term plan and come up with $7 million?
Do you know
Is
where
that
she
magic?
is? Have you got
So look, there's a couple of things there. So some of these, this is another example. So the town centres is showing a more or less $7 million, but that's the only number in there. So we've got some issues when we go from our financial system into the designer tables. So that's another area. So we need to go through page 59. We think is absolutely right. The tables beneath that. We've said we need to go through and check. We've had an error transferring the numbers from one program to the other. But ultimately, what this table is showing you is it's showing you what the Capital Project Board is doing. It is managing $100 million going out of the first 3 years of our CapEx program, and it is shifting money around between the projects, and so that's what these pages are really trying to highlight. You've got the difference summarised on page 59, and then you can see it as it flows through all the activities. So there will be differences, and it's trying to clearly show that the budget that you're setting for next financial year, it's different to the long-term plan and why. And there's a little bit of narrative on what the big changes are. So, but we do have a problem with the table. So the $7 million question that you've identified, that's an error. We need to go and fix that.
Yeah, so it looks like we'll have to go through these tables, just make sure everything's correct, and then we'll sign them off.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think it's more than an minor editorial change, so I think we'll identify that when we come to the recommendations. Councillor Coe?
Yeah, look, we've had some comments this morning from a public speaker that 6.9 is still too high. It's within what we said in the LTP, but how come it's not even lower than that? So I just wondered if you could, for the benefit of people who are listening into this conversation, just explain the process that was gone through to really examine the costs, to give confidence to the public that this is not just a cost plus exercise. What was the process that we went through in order to have confidence that there aren't things in there that are luxuries or superfluous, or that we've actually really taken a good hard look at our costs, and there's not a lot of fat left in the system. How can we give the public confidence of that?
Thanks, Councillor Coe. I might start with the process, and it's a process that has been very transparent, I might add, because we've had open briefings, and so it's always disappointing when we are critiqued so much by certain members of the public who perhaps haven't participated in the process that has got us to where we are today. So that's probably my starting comment. So the long-term plan sets out what the strategy looks like for us for a 10-year period, and we really focus on the first 3 years. We made it really clear that we were going to focus on sustainability and affordability and looking at how we manage our debt. So again, it's really interesting to find parts of the community who comment on debt and suggest that whilst debt in other councils might be a lot higher than ours, ours is not, and we shouldn't be focused on debt. If we remember back to the long-term plan and what the financial strategy suggested for us, if we keep spending the way we're spending, our debt doubles in 10 years. So to suggest that isn't an issue is something of a surprise to me. So that's another point that I will make. So then we talk about how we got to 6.9. So we've charted a course at 7% for each year of the long-term plan, noting that we're entering into year 2. and a portion of that continues to focus on debt reduction. This is year 2, so a large portion of the projected 7% was closing the depreciation gap, which ensured that we then funded depreciation and we didn't have to continue to burden our ratepayers by taking on additional debt. So that was a key consideration. When we looked at costs, and we did that early in the financial year, we understood that the 7% had jumped up to roughly 10%. And so Mark and SLT set about on a program of work to understand the options that we could bring to you to reduce the cost, to keep us within the commitment that we've made to no greater than 7%. And you would have seen that we've taken $100 million out of the Capital Works program. That wasn't something that was easily negotiated. And I'm always conscious of when I ask SLT to look at what it is that they are wanting to deliver, that there will be some hurt in the decisions that we make around that SLT table. So those conversations continue. So this annual plan, we came up with options that we brought to the table, and we classified those options as having either high, medium or low risk for the organisation as to what we did with those. We agreed on a suite of options that we were able to go away and work out what that reduction looked like, also taking into account that there's a growth amount in there because the district is growing. And I would say a lot of that is due to the infrastructure that's been put in place to allow people to live here and grow here and work in other places. So that got us to 6.9. We've taken $3 and a bit million out of the operating budget for the 25-26 financial year. And again, to suggest that that is not considerable when you look at what was ahead of us, I'd challenge that assumption. It's really easy to sit outside of an organisation and pass judgment on that organisation. Once you're in that organisation and actually understand the complexities, and I would suggest what we've seen this morning around the council table and the public speakers really identifies the breadth, the width and the depth of what it is that we have to consider and the decisions that we put before you to make those decisions. So at a high level, that's what's got us to 6.9. The team has worked really hard, and I take my hat off to them. It's not easy when you have an ambitious, optimistic strategy that wants you to grow whilst maintaining a sustainable financial program of work. So I'm okay with where we've got to. Is there more work to do? Of course there's more work to do. And 26, 27, I'm sure won't be a painless conversation for us, but we're up for the challenge because it's important to understand what the concerns of our community are and how we're able to meet those expectations. So a little soundbite, probably a little bit more than a little soundbite from me, and I'll ask Mark and Ian if they have anything to add.
Thanks, Darren. Look, not an awful lot more. I'll just reiterate a couple of points. This week's budget announced by the Crown, there's been a lot of focus on the $9 billion of debt that they have to pay in interest per year. By the time that we get into this annual plan, our annual finance cost will be $10.5 million for the year, which equates to just over $200,000 a week. So that feels like a problem. Plus, we consulted with the community on the long-term plan, and they want us to get the debt down. We'd actually proposed to go a lot faster. 10% rates increase per annum would have had it. You would have started to have seen a noticeable reduction in debt in year 3. But the Office of the Auditor General kibosh that. So we feel that our annual operating costs with a $10 million finance charge, we do feel that debt is an issue, and it's something we want to look at, and we know that the community wants debt down, and that's what this council is focused on. The only other thing that I'll add to what Darren just said is inflation. So we don't operate in supermarket goods. We actually, our basket, and you've heard me say this before, it is entirely different. There is little to no point coming and asking why our inflation is higher than CPI, because we build reservoirs, we build roads, we buy pipes, we buy laptops, we buy servers. Our goods are completely different, and our inflation indices are so much more than CPI, and that's one of your big cost drivers. So we've worked really hard. You've identified over $3 million of savings, and so we believe that our debt is an issue, and our inflation is much higher than CPI because we're a business of multiple businesses, and what we procure is very, very different to household goods.
And we do care.
We do
Councillor
care.
Coe?
We do. Yeah, so thank you for that. So what you're saying is, I mean, to go any lower, excuse me, would jeopardise our future financial sustainability. We really need to focus on getting that debt down. And of course, you know, we're mindful of the impact on ratepayers of that approach. But you know, we're playing the long game, aren't we?
Yeah.
We can't take a short-term view.
Look, I can't reinforce more strongly what Darren said. Just over 3% of your rates increase this year is closing that non-funded depreciation gap. So you have reduced your debt by $3.5 million for 25-26. That is a giant leap forward. You need to do that for that financial strategy to start really reducing your debt in year 7 onwards. So, you know, that's the kingpin of maintaining that financial strategy. Yeah, the debt limits have gone up. The headroom's there. And if your view is, well, there's lots of headroom there, so we don't need to do anything about it, but at some point it needs to be repaid. And we're trying to get our debt under control. So closing that fully funding depreciation year on year from year 2 is significant, and you've reduced your debt by $3.5 million from 25-26. That's significant.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah. I said I noted that Michael Papish, who I have quite a bit of time for actually, but it mentioned this morning that he considered that debt wasn't a problem, coming from a former Treasury man. Not entirely sure about that, but $200,000 a week in interest is very sobering when you think about the decisions that we have to make around the table for tens of thousands of dollars, you know, knowing that that's disappearing out the back. He also mentioned this morning that there was no real gain for us in the short term in doing what we're doing. But you know, I don't want to get into a debate with the Treasury guy, but my understanding is that what you do in year 1, whilst there may not be a gain in year 1, that is actually essential to what you do in year 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So in terms of what you do in the first year, that is integral to the strategy for the overall plan. Is that right?
That's 100% correct.
Right.
You have $305 million worth of debt that you're trying to reduce, so it's going to take time.
That's right. And I do get, at the same time, I get people, they want us to swim faster, but they want us to stay dry at the same time, and that's always quite difficult to do. And I would note actually that the process, and I've seen a few of these over the years, that this has been as transparent a process as ever I've seen. This has been a really transparent process. In fact, a lot of those open briefings, that didn't used to happen. Open briefings weren't, that's not necessarily common to all councils, right? So I thought that did give people an opportunity to feed in, to understand what was going on, and anyway, just wanted to make the note of that. Just a couple of points for me. They may seem churlish, but on page 134, where we go to community facilities hall hire, I can't support that because I speak out very loudly about the fact that I don't think there should be any cost for public hall hires, but anyway, that's just leaving that aside. The other one I did want to note was on page 123 under alcohol licensing. The Kapiti Coast Alcohol Licensing Fees Bylaw 2024, I think, meets a need that that was important, that actually feeds into the bottom line. I also note in there, because there's been a couple of issues have been raised around risk profiles, that there is a mechanism inside that bylaw for council to be able to consider movement within those categories. But this is, I think, the first annual plan where these numbers will be impactful. And just again to reiterate that there hadn't been any increase for 12 years. So just acknowledging that, but all in all, great process, great putting.
Councillor Kirby, Deputy Mayor.
Cool. Can I just a really brief question? You've possibly answered. I just want to make it really clear. So this year's annual plan that we're about to vote on will fully fund depreciation from OPEX, not from debt. Is
Yes.
that true?
Yes.
Okay. So that $3 million that's sitting in this year's annual plan will not be sitting in the next one.
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Bit of a different question. If I can just bring your attention to page 31 of the agenda. The reason I brought this up, we've heard from the community with regards to what we spend money on, and I think I mentioned this slightly before. There's also those invisible things that we spend money on that the community doesn't really know a lot about. And I just want to bring attention to the civil defence aspect. I'll read it out. We also provide civil defence and emergency management facilities and services to meet council's obligations under the Civil Defence and Emergency Act. And then just go down a few paragraphs why we do it. We provide civil defence and emergency management facilities and services locally, regionally, and if needed, nationally. And I had the good fortune to be present at the recent exercise where a tsunami was coming from Chile, and all the staff and all the resources that we were utilising with regards to addressing that. And I just wanted to, perhaps, if there could just be a little bit of an explanation about our role in that space, just for generally the community that may be listening, with regards to that invisible cost that we have as a community in regards to supplying things like civil defence, emergency response.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm happy to take that. I'm probably part of that invisible cost. I'm the Wellington Regional Chair for KEG, which is our coordinated executive group. So probably won't be able to get to town if something major happens, but that's by the by. Yes, so it's not new to local government, and that is probably one of the unseen services that we provide locally, regionally, and nationally. Everyone here has a day job, but we all know that when something happens, what is our normal day-to-day business pauses and we respond. And so it's incumbent upon us, and legislatively required actually, to be able to provide civil defence emergency management at a local level, supported into that regional and of course national. And if you think about some of the most recent events, Cyclone Gabrielle in the Hawke's Bay was probably a really good example where not just Kapiti, but all of local government across New Zealand provided support to that in some form, shape or another. We had several of our emergency management qualified people, either desk leads or controllers, spend time in the Hawke's Bay supporting our colleagues up there. We carry the cost of that, right? And that's a cost that is part of our general day-to-day business. We have a bill that is currently going before Parliament that is looking to make changes and add more responsibility to local government, looking to professionalise. We see more often than not the minister, who is very active in this space, and I must congratulate Minister Mitchell on his approach to civil defence emergency management and how he front foots it, and he turns up. And that's about building morale, right? Because we are constantly working in the background to try and coordinate those emergency services. We know here in Kapiti that we have a finite resource and we can stand up an EOC, an Emergency Ops Centre, for a limited period of time, right? So we are looking to build our capability in that space, but also to build our professional skill set so that we can work more integrated at that regional and national level. So I think thank you for raising the point about the invisible stuff that we do, and it goes sight unseen until something happens, you know, and then we all have to stop what we're doing and attend. So I hope that that's a little look into the window of.
Oh, look, I appreciate that. I think I made a comment, I didn't think I know I made a comment with the Kapiti Health Advisory Group that we're community builders, and you know, but that's part of the role as such. But it's one of those things that's not seen. So just appreciate the making us a bit more aware of that.
Right. I'm not seeing any more questions. So I'm looking for a mover for the recommendations on page 27. Actually, I'll move them from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilson will second. We're on page 27 with the annual plan recommendations. Is there a D? There's no D. There's no D. Okay. Am I right that there's no D?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I'm going to make a minor amendment with the leave of the seconder to make minor editorial changes and corrections.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, does that cover off the error that we've discovered?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so, because we're going to correct it.
Okay, great. I was going to ask that question about how we cover that. Cool, thank you.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if it's a minor correction. So, okay, so thanks to staff. It's been an enormous amount of work. And I agree with Councillor Wilson. It's been a very transparent process. We have pretty much all our deliberations in public, and people are welcome to attend. Our door is always open for comment. I think the Chief Executive undersold a little bit the amount of work that went in to find the savings. I was upstairs and the door to his office was closed for hours on end while they came in with their machetes, literal and figurative, to slash away at the budget. And the Chief Executive and the SLT and their teams worked really hard to find those savings. And I'd like to acknowledge my fellow members of the editorial committee who've been working on this as well, and on the consultation document. A bit of extra work went in there. And also the rest of the councillors for their involvement in this process, and the community board chairs. Do I have any further debate? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Oh,
Sorry.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, just quickly.
Your 2 cents, please.
Yeah, my 2 cents. Just wanted to say what a good document it was. I quite enjoyed reading it, and the amount of data and information that's conveyed in a way that was actually easily readable. And I agree with, I think it might have been the CE. It's very easy to pick a couple of sentences or a couple of threads of data out of a massive document like that, and I think it's a bit unfair. I think it's a very good document, and congratulate the staff for it, the amount of time and energy that's put into it. Bearing in mind what the CE has just said earlier, I want to signal I won't be supporting the adoption of the annual plan, not because I don't value the hard work that's gone into it, but because I have fundamental concerns over the overall direction we're committing to. This year's 6.9% rate increase is a clear signal of where we're headed, and we're projecting similar increases for the next 10 years. It's a heavy ask for our community, especially now. And I sort of feel that I didn't support the long-term plan and the strategy that's contained in it. And so for me, the annual plan is the fruit of the poison tree, as an analogy. So because I didn't accept the, and didn't agree with the long-term plan, what falls out of it is the annual plan. And I think now we're seeing, with the annual plan, we're seeing the results of that direction. But if the foundations aren't right and the original plan was too ambitious, too costly, then the subsequent years inherit those same issues. So I'll vote no shortly. But that's not to say I don't support the work that you all do, because it's not easy. It's not easy. So thank you.
Okay, suddenly we have people wanting to say something. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and just want to acknowledge Councillor Cooper's comments. He has been steadfast in his stand all the way through this. I will also note that the rates increases that we've faced, both with year one and year two, and the projected ones moving forward, are higher than I would like myself. And initially through the process, we did debate that early on in the long-term plan, and tried to shift things, but ended up that wasn't able to happen. I'm of the opinion that we need to support, I need to support the will of the table and where that has gone, and we passed a long-term plan that included 7%. I'm very proud of the fact that we've managed to hold to that 7%, which I think says something of the will of this table in terms of holding to our governance decisions, that we're not willing to break those decisions, and it will be up to the new council as to what they determine to do moving forward from here. I think there is confidence in this table that we will robustly converse and discuss any decisions, particularly around money and finance, because we do care for this community, because all of us are paying these same rates increases that we're approving. And I know from my personal pocket that takes a hit when this happens. So I'll be supporting the annual plan, but I will note that the ongoing concern for me about affordability is a question. And I wrote again today in my notes after hearing our public speakers, the comment around the 7% lift of affordability from 5% to 7%, and that's getting blown out of the water by the time we get further down into the long-term plan. I think that is something that we need to converse about and make note of. I don't think that that's a good direction that we're heading on, and maybe that needs to come up in our next conversations around the long-term plan. Hopefully I'm at the table to be able to help that conversation. So, but again, I'll echo Councillor Cooper's. The staff have done a fantastic job in this space. I feel like I know very much what's going on, got a good handle on, and a sense of trust that they're working hard to ensure that we're using the money that is entrusted to us by our ratepayers. They're using it to the best of their ability in the current climate with the current funding arrangements that we have as local councils. So thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'm afraid I'm on a similar vein. Council officers are directed by this table with regards to the direction that we go in, and this table has sent them on a direction, and they've done an excellent job with regards to the plan. I actually fully support the plan. What I don't support is the rating figures that it's based on. And I haven't since I basically took this seat. For me, I was promised a substantial change from last triennium to this triennium, and I appreciate all the circumstances that didn't allow that to happen. But I voiced my concern then, and I still voice my concern now. The people, my demographic, the fact, and my personal impact, it hurts. It hurts a hell of a lot. And a big thing for me was the ceiling cap as well. And I think that needs to be addressed. But I won't vote in the negative. I'm not prepared to scuttle or try to stop this plan, but I will be abstaining from the vote based on those views, which goes very, very contrary to my belief that we're here to make decisions. But I just can't support. I just can't support the rate situation that we're in at the moment.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate one of the reasons I support this so strongly and the strategy is because I'm very keen to see debt reduction. This is a component part of a debt reduction strategy, and to me that is absolutely crucial. I mean, I might be wrong in terms of the rates, and you hear about, you know, increasing rates, and I understand the burden that puts on people. If you took say a $500,000 house, I mean, good luck finding one of those, but if you took one of those over a 10-year period, the extra rates that you would pay if there was a zero rate increase is about $30,000 over that 10 years. And yet the property value over that 10 years has been inflated by about $300,000. So the ratepayers are about a net, that individual ratepayer is about a net $270,000 better off in terms of their asset value. And one of the reasons those houses get that value is because of the public amenities around them. If you get rid of your library and you get rid of your pool and you get rid of those things, see what happens to your property values. Get rid of your parks, any of those sorts of things. So one of the things that actually adds value to the asset of ratepayers are those public amenities that the public pay for. But overall, the strategy, I think, is entirely appropriate. You will hear people say that rates should be kept to the rate of inflation. That with due respect to those people, that's actually silly, because we don't deal in the same inflationary environment that the public do. And linking it to CPI makes no sense. We have a separate kind of inflation inside local government, and anybody who's involved in local government will ratify that. But in terms of Coop's, the poisonous tree, I personally think, you know, this debt reduction strategy, that's the magic beans from the great tree, Glenn. So that's, for me, that's the way I want to go. And there's a fundamental philosophical difference in how you approach it. For me personally, debt reduction is crucial, and I see this as a fundamental part of that strategy. At the same time, I do acknowledge the hurt that people will feel, particularly, and if your asset, I mentioned the asset value might increase, but if you have no intention of selling your house and you just want to live there, then you're feeling that. People are feeling it. And so the fact that we've made a $3 million cut, I think, acknowledges that, the importance of that. And overall, I think this organisation is about as lean and mean as it can get. And you know, there have been absolutely strident endeavours to do that, to look at the organisation. That's happened from a top-down situation. So I'm comfortable that what needed to be done is being done, but we aren't going over the top that we were causing public pain.
Councillor Coe. Funnily enough, I'm going to support Councillor Wilson.
Good on you, brave. Good on you.
Because, yeah, look, I think our financial strategy is the key to long-term rates affordability. It's absolutely key to it. We can take a short-term approach and, you know, not worry about our debt, you know, cut back on essential spending to make things more affordable, but that will only cause us much greater pain in the long term. We have to stick to that financial strategy. In the past, we've done what I think is silly things like borrowing money in effect to cover operating costs. We've put an end to that. I'm absolutely determined. And our financial strategy sets that out. We will no longer do that, because, you know, any business that I've ever heard of that borrows money to cover operating costs doesn't last very long. So that is not a sensible way to do things. We do need to keep a very close eye on costs Absolutely, and the exercise we went through this year to go through line by line and look at what we can cut back on, we need to keep working on that. But, you know, we, in my view, we can't take our eyes off the long-term position. We have to get that debt down, and if we can do that, then this place is going to be, you know, a much more affordable place to live than some other areas down the track. It's, you know, I really just do think we can't take a short-term view of this, so I'm fully supportive of what's being proposed in this year's annual plan.
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, I agree with Councillor Wilson and Councillor Coe. We need to be sticking to our financial strategy. Nobody wants to see high rates rises, right? Nobody wants to vote for a 7% rates increase. But we instructed our staff to come up with as many savings as they could. We did not instruct them, as we could have through the annual plan, to change service levels to bring that figure down. We're not bound to the long-term plan. Any annual plan, we can instruct changes to service levels or our capital works program and go out to consultation. And I just want to make that really clear, because that is an option that's open to the next council. If they want to stop something, if they want to change things, if they want to do some of the things that we say are going to come up over the coming months, then they can do that. Sometimes it's hard to know when you have the opportunity to make those changes and make those decisions. But each annual plan, you have that opportunity to set the rates for that year. We as a council made a decision to stick with the long-term plan and not go out for formal consultation, and to stick with our program. And I, for one, and there are other councillors around the table, I'm pleased that we've done that, because that sets us up in terms of resilience. It sets us up for the future. It means we can deal with the challenges that are coming up. It means we're providing good infrastructure to deal with our growth. And it means we're providing the levels of service that our community has told us that they want. But that can change in a year. So I encourage everyone to support this. The other thing is, if we all vote against this annual plan, we can't strike our rates. That wouldn't really work, would it? So I think we've got a brilliant document in front of us. A lot of work has gone in to not only creating the financial strategy, but massaging it into something that we think is doable for our community. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable for our community. I also welcome the legislation that's increased the rates rebates that came through recently. That's certainly going to help those who are struggling. And I like that we now have our own rates remissions forms readily available at the counter, and people are encouraged to use those facilities if they need to. So with that, I'll put this to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. We move on to fees and charges, 10.3. We'll see if we can just get these next couple out of the way before lunch.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, we'll take the report as read. Now that you've adopted the annual plan, this paper is actually setting the fees and charges, which are actually not part of the annual plan, but the annual plan actually budgets for the revenue based on these fees and charges. So adopting this paper today sets the fees and charges that we will start to enforce from 1 July 2025. So there's nothing to report back to you since issuing the agenda. I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Wilson.
Just the question is how interesting it might have been if we did this first and we didn't agree to them. The impact of that on the plan. But say for instance the community facilities hall hire, on page 134. So were we of a collective mind to provide the public what they should be getting at no price, would that have a massive impact on the finances of the annual plan? Because these things, and again, I don't want to relitigate stuff that we've already gone through collectively, but I just wondered, I couldn't see what the actual impact of that might be. And I don't want anyone to have to get their abacus out at this stage, but just worth bearing in mind sometimes that what makes a relatively minor income difference can make a significant social difference in a negative way.
Oh, thank you, Councillor. I'll start, and maybe Ian, you chip in. So look, fees and charges and rates, they work hand in hand. If you increase your fees and charges, you reduce your rates, and if you go the other way, if you increase your fees and charges, reduce rates, reduce your fees and charges, you increase rates. So you're specifically asking about the community facilities hire. This is proposing a fee increase. You have adopted the annual plan. If you don't accept these fees, it will have an impact on the annual plan. It will be immaterial. This is a volumes game. These are the fees. We estimate the patronage, and it gives us a number. So there will be an impact on the annual plan. We'd have to go and remodel it. It would not be material. I probably just need to leave it there.
Yeah. I would just say at this, what is an 11th hour, I'm not proposing that we would unpick this. I'm just letting people know that I won't support this bit. But I do think that there is room to develop a policy around this. Because again, it's a philosophical question, I guess, but a philosophical question that has real world costs involved. So yeah, happy to, but just letting people, I'm not going to support that bit. But at the same time, while I've still got red,
Sorry, Sean has a comment too on that.
Sorry.
About $230,000 a year, I think, is it, in terms of revenue? That's the figure that you asked for before. That's the figure you're talking about in terms of those all rentals. So if you were of a mind, then that's 0.25% or something like that in terms of rates number.
Yeah. So for me, $230,000, I would make it free and then work that number out. But in terms of a 10% increase on that, it's my argument at this stage in the real world until the policy is developed is about the 10% increase. So the 10% increase then becomes what, $20-something thousand. So anyway, but I'm cool with that. Just on the I'll go back to my point about the alcohol licensing fees. I think those are entirely valid. I can't see any rational argument against those at all, and we will be implementing those. And I just reiterate for people who may have an issue with that there hadn't been an increase for 12 years. Just giving that some context.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested to know about the reserve land rentals. So these are listed on page 133. There's no commentary around this particular table. So here it lists clubs with alcohol licenses, those without. I'm just wondering why there's such a big difference in those. And I assume that the actual alcohol license is on top of this rental. The other point too, while I'm going, is that there's actually no difference. So I take it this is only an annual increase, but there's nothing to mention how much. I assume it's just the forecast increase that these have gone up by. Just double checking that is the case for these as well.
So these have increased. Yeah. So they will be inflated by LGCI, essentially cost inflated we use for local government. So these are the new proposed fees for those areas. I am not familiar with the detail. I'm sorry to answer the rest of your question.
Okay, we'll take that offline then.
I suppose maybe.
We're not going to change it at this point.
I know, but for clarification, because like this will impact, there's a health and hobbies groups, there's an education one there and also youth and service. So there will be some people who will be asking some questions, so some clarification on these will be, I think, quite important. There's absolutely no commentary around the section.
The increase has been approximately 3%.
Yeah, okay.
Those fees in the previous year.
But that difference between the alcohol licence and the non, I think is quite important. Cute.
Cool. Thank you. Councillor Kirby?
I think my one's a little bit related to the next paper, which is setting of rates, but I'll signal it may give some time. We're increasing our volumetric charge on water by a substantial amount in terms of percentage, well above the 3% of Burl, from $1.39 per cubic metre to $1.72, including GST. I'd be really interested, and for the public record, for us to just have some conversation around why that increase is taking place so substantially in this time and the relative. I'm sorry, I probably should have asked this through an earlier briefing, but just a signal of that question. I know it sits under the setting of rates, due dates and penalties. That's where it's specifically in, but it is referenced in this paper of fees and charges related to our policies.
Do we have an answer for that now?
I think we should just pick that up in the next paper. It'd be probably easier.
Okay, so it's relevant.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll park that question. Any further questions? Okay, so I'll move this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanford? No? So we're looking at page 30 of the paper, recommendations A and B. Been moved and seconded. I'll waive my right of introduction. Any further comment? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just in terms of how this is put, I don't want to be churlish or anything, but I don't want. I'm happy to support the overall paper, but the whole hire thing, I don't want to support that. So. Yeah, but can that be taken as a separate thing or not? No?
Not
okay,
really.
no, that's cool. That's cool. We'll run with it.
Councillor Halliday?
Yep, fees and charges, they are what they are, 3.2%. I get that. All I wanted to flag at the moment, which I'll follow up externally from here, is the swimming pool fees. The adult rate starts at the age of 16. So I just wanted to flag that. I think that seems to me a bit young with regards to the price of that, but that's something we'll look through, I'm sure. Potentially, we can look through it in a different
Okay,
way.
a couple of things to look at next year.
Yep, yeah, that's
We
cool.
can take a note of them and
just
make
flagging
sure
it
they're
more than anything
addressed.
else.
Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. 10.4, setting of rates, due dates and penalties. Page 33 of agendas. I'll pass over to Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. So setting of the rates. So this essentially, there's a formal procedure that has to happen. You must adopt your annual plan before you can set your rates. So now that you have adopted your annual plan, we're in a position for you to consider setting the rates. So normally, typically, we will seek independent legal review from Simpson Grierson to go through effectively our rating policy, which sits in our annual plan, and then they actually review the paper that's before you today to just make sure that the rate and the dollar capital value, land value, or fixed charge, variable volumetric charge, all of it all reconciles. But given that we have not made a change to our rating system at all, we didn't go via Simpson Grierson, but we did have our internal legal team fully review the documents. So rest assured, it has been through a legal review, it has been checked, and this is the key area of focus year on year by our auditors to make sure that the paper by which you vote on that sets the rates actually is a mirror image of what's in the annual plan. So a tick there. but we just didn't feel we needed Simpson Grierson to do that, given we haven't made any changes. The previous paper talked about special water meter reads. There's a fee for that. And so by having it in our fees and charges schedule, it means that council can actually invoice for that. This is the rates. So we have a targeted rate for water, stormwater, etc. And a query was raised, why has the volumetric water rate gone up so much? So typically what we do is we work with yourselves, we go through the numbers, we go through the activities, we look at the fees and charges, and the net cost of the activity is what needs to be recovered by rates. We make sure that we're in accordance with our revenue and financing policy, which gives us the limits that we can charge by rates and fees and charges. And we did that exact exercise. We went through water, and we knew what we were getting through some increased fees and charges. We knew what the net cost of the operating cost was, and we also know that with water, with the water activity, we have a cap on what we can charge by way of the fixed charge and what we can charge by the volumetric charge. So we've estimated what the consumption of water will be. We've looked at the costs, and we've set the volumetric charge to fully recover our costs based on our projected water consumption, together with what we levy on the fixed charge. Through our annual plan development process, we could have done a lot of work on the water account. We didn't, because we were managing the overall number that we always do. In the past, we've looked at a smoothing effect. We've knowingly not recovered our full cost of water. This year, we're staying true. We're staying true to the financial strategy. We're not borrowing to fund operating costs. Rates are paying for the net cost of our activities, and when you run it through the system and the model, the volumetric charge has gone up accordingly to recover our costs. So it's definitely a point going forward when we develop annual plans is to focus on the water account and what the fixed charge will be and what the variable water rate will be. We have actually focused on with our new ERP system. The fixed charge is moving into your rates invoice, your property rates invoice. So we've been focusing on that. We've had a lot of information on when people actually water meters will be read. They'll be invoiced or charged for the water they consume, and so their invoice that reaches their letterboxes will just be for their volumetric water charges. The fixed charge has moved to the invoice, so we had a lot of focus on that. But going forward, we can certainly, as we develop annual plans with you, have more focus on the water account and what it means for the volumetric rate.
Thank you for that answer. I'm also aware that obviously we're in the Three Waters Local Water Done Well process, and we're going to have to ring fence all of that, so that's going to come out pretty closely over this next period of time as we analyse that. I just wanted to highlight that there are significant increases both on the fixed charge and the volumetric charge in this, and you've explained why those are. I think it's important for the public to note that there are changes across the board, not just 6.9% in terms of a rates increase, but also in some other areas. So I want to make sure that we're highlighting and knowledgeable about why that is. So thanks for that explanation.
Sean's got something to add to that as
Yeah,
well.
I just add to that the figures we used in the consultation for the Three Waters reflected the increased cost. Well, it's not broken down into those volumetric and fixed charge, but they're the numbers we've been talking about in terms of that document and the differences between, the extra cost coming in for that space against Three Waters. So there is a connection between what Mark's talked about in terms of the costs, what we've been telling people in terms of where things are heading with the Three Waters, and the numbers that we've been using. So that helps.
Just checking in with everybody. I've now got 4 more lights on. I thought this paper would go through because it flows out of the other papers, I thought it would go through quite quickly. Do we want to just pause
Just one
here,
issue for me.
have some lunch, come back?
One's quick, too.
Is the answer quick as well, though? That's the thing.
yeah.
Questions are always quick.
Yeah, the answer to mine. The answer to mine will be
Or
no.
usually, unless they're Councillor Wilson doing some debate.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, so the answer to mine will probably be no, so that's quick. Just on page 36D, the 10% penalty on rates and water rates, it just doesn't sit well with me. I've raised this all the time. I personally think it's just an unreasonable tax on the poor, or if it's not a tax on the poor, it's a tax on the broke, or even the temporarily broke. And there are other reasons. We've got, aged people in the community, neurodiverse people in the community who are more apt to miss these things and then get penalised. Now, I understand that we have a rates rebate scheme that people can apply to, and it's quite overt, actually. Council is very good about making sure that people know about that. But again, there are people for whom...
Is there a question in here, Councillor
Yeah, the
Wilson?
question is, why would we want to impose an extra tax on those who are poor? So we're already saying rates are too high, and for some people it's too high, and this is an issue. I'm just saying I don't think there should be a penalty. I think the answer to that's going to be no, but I'd just say I don't think there should be a penalty for
Do
that.
we know what the revenue is from that penalty? So
And
we
not-
don't have
no,
the
no.
information to be able to change
no
that.
with the
Can we put that on the list of things to discuss next time?
Can I just give
Or
one quick
whoever's
answer?
here.
May,
Yeah.
may I give one quick
Sorry,
answer?
yes.
So look, thank you. So the Local Government Rating Act actually requires you to actually impose that first charge. So it's a 10%. So it's a 10% penalty on for the 25-26 year if you're late in paying your rates, you have a 10% penalty that's imposed by the Local Government Rating Act, and it also requires if you are behind rates at the start of the rating year, it requires councils to put a 10% on, which we do. In addition to that, it actually it provides a further provision that round about July you can actually ping another 10%.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, this council has always taken the view that the two penalties that you're meant to apply under legislation for rates and arrears before the start of the rating year, we only apply one of them. So and that's been the position of Kapiti for many years. So we could actually apply a further penalty, which we don't.
Okay, Councillor Coe?
Just further clarification on the volumetric charging for water. So I just want to make sure I've got my understanding correct. So we're not talking about the cost of water suddenly leaping up. It's more about how we collect, how we fund that cost. Is that correct? So there's been some element of subsidisation from the general rate to that service. Is that correct or not?
So year on year, the costs of providing water do go up.
Yes, yeah, well,
Yep.
obviously everything goes up,
Yep.
but I mean,
Yep.
the shift is just one of fully
Yeah.
recovering the cost as opposed to cross-subsidising through the general rate. Is that correct or not?
Look, I think that is exactly right. What we found in going through the detail of the annual plan is that we were under recovering for those targeted water rates, and so effectively it was coming out of the general.
Yeah.
And so we're just keen to, whilst there is quite an increase in the water rates, there's an equivalent reduction essentially
Yes.
in what we're recovering through the general.
That's right.
And
That's what I
so
wanted to clarify,
our
yeah.
own policies, revenue and financing policy says that we will recover fully through those
Yeah.
targeted rates. So we found we were short actually in the
Yeah.
prior year. But also, of course, local water, with all of the local water done well with the requirement to
Yeah.
ring fence, it's important
That's
to
right.
get these things right.
That's right. So it would have hit then anyway if we.
Yeah,
if we
I mean,
hadn't
just
made that
to
change.
reiterate what the point Sean made before, in terms of all of the modelling that supported the local water done well work, that was based on cost. Okay, so the cost was correct. The cost that fed through to
Yeah.
Morrison Low that they did all their projections on was correct. It's just that actually our own rating system wasn't recovering fully. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's an adjustment offset by the
Yeah,
general.
I think the issue, particularly for people on low incomes, is they budget everything down almost to the last dollar, and when they suddenly, and they're budgeting X amount for water, and when it's suddenly a different amount, they go, oh, but I haven't set aside enough. That's the issue. Is just about expectations around what they're going to have to pay and when. And I think that has caused a bit of agony, if you like, in the community. Just the timing thing.
Yeah.
That's all I
That was
wanted
a
to say.
slightly different issue there. That was the timing of the change of how we charge for it. That's separate to this, which is similar, but it's a separate issue. Yeah.
I just want to make that point, that's all. That people do sort of, they know when their rates are due, when their water's due, and they have everything, all the money set aside. And when it's different than what they thought it was going to be, it's a problem.
That's a point well made. Yeah. Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, two quick things. On page 35, number 14, there's the water conservation device loan rate. And I just, from my own thing, first question is, do we still do that? Do we still offer that as a service?
No, we don't.
Okay, that's cool, that answers that. And the other one is, do we just divide that by 10 and spread that over 10 years sort of thing?
Yep,
That's it.
Yep.
The next one was just on page 37, talks to a rates requirement of 133 million. That's the GST inclusive figure. I just wanted to just clarify all the figures that we've seen in the annual plan are GST exclusive. Is that right?
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Councillor Warwick.
Oh, mine is just a quick follow-up to Nigel's and D. The 10% rate, so you've said we're directed to charge that 10%. We can do two others, but we choose not to do one. So why can't we choose not to do that 10%? And the thing is that when people are under stress and they don't pay their rates, then on an average rates it's $100 and something, which is a huge actual amount. And if you get a overdue account from a mechanic or anything else, it's never 10% of the bill. It might be $10 or something like that. It's just a huge amount. And if we can choose not to do on one of those things that we're directed to do, why can't we choose, or even give it a little bit more leeway, like, first month $10, second month $10, and by the third month you're paying 10% or something like that, just to give people who are under pressure, because you don't know why they're not paying it, but I don't imagine it's a continual thing for people. It might be a one-off.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So look, for our ratepayers that are under pressure, so our rates team are very, very proactive. We've got a substantial rates remission policy. We go a lot further than many other councils do. Our rates team are constantly monitoring accounts. They actually contact the ratepayers that are falling behind, and they encourage them to enter into what we call a payment plan. As soon as they've done that, they don't pay late penalties. So it's a balancing act. So our team is actively monitoring the collectability of our rates and actually identifying those ratepayers. If they're falling behind, they might be in trouble. They may be falling behind because they're just not prepared to pay the rates. So it's a balancing act. So it's actually making sure that those ratepayers that are paying their rates aren't subsidising those that aren't. And over the years, I am 100% confident that our rates team are constantly identifying those ratepayers that need support, and we are helping them through that.
Bang, you're charged, and that's really tough for people. Then they struggle even more. I don't know. I struggle with
So look, what I'm trying to convey is that those ratepayers that are struggling to pay, our team are actively talking to, and when it's established that they're struggling to pay, they don't get the penalty. Well, we've also gone through years where we've actually had to borrow quite a bit of money because our rates aren't being paid. So when rates aren't paid, we still have our operating costs. We still actually have cash flow issues, and so we have to actually we bridge that gap through borrowing. So the team, we don't want to pay penalties. We'd love it if everyone was on direct debit and everyone paid on time, but that's not the reality of the situation. But our team are actively monitoring and ringing people up and saying, just noticed that you haven't paid your rates bill. And actually, sometimes they find that they thought they have paid their rates bill, but they thought it was property rates and they paid it into the water account. And so we transfer it across and we undo the penalties. There's a lot of work that happens in that space. But we choose to set the rates with the levers that we have available to us to actually ping those that are deliberately not paying on time.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, thank you. So I know there's been quite a lot of conversation around volumetric charge increases. I think there will be some people who will actually focus on the amount of water that they're using, and that probably isn't a bad thing, particularly, but it will impact those people who are financially struggling in terms of paying. My question is, so I know that there is a certain percentage of leaks in our district. Is there still a free service, or what type of service is available for people who want to check to make sure that there are no leaks from these systems? There used to be the green plumber, I think, previously.
Yeah, that's right. So there was a number of, this is several years previously, we had you could get advice on sustainable design internally in terms of your house, water, curtains and lining, and how to be more energy efficient. And there was also a green gardener who provided advice in terms of the setting up a garden and a worm farm. And we had a water conservation officer as well that you could ask advice for. And we did, after water meters were introduced, we did have someone that would go around and give you some assistance in that. We don't provide all of those services anymore. If you do have a leak, at the moment, if you fix that leak, then you're able to claim a credit in terms of the bill. You just need to demonstrate, I think there's a time boundary around when you were aware of it and how quickly you're able to get someone to fix it, so you can do that, and we will actually, if there's a service request or if you put a request into council, someone will come around on site and have a look. And they won't go around your property, but they will let you know that you've got a private side leak as opposed to a public side leak. Then it's up to the homeowner to get someone to, because getting onto the property and then trying to determine where that leak might be.
I think we're getting a little bit off topic, actually.
Problematic.
Yeah, so the point, I suppose, it's when you actually, if the leak is not before.
We're off topic.
Yeah, if it's a case of.
We're stopping the conversation around leaks unless it relates to the charge.
Yeah,
Thank
no, I've
you.
got my answer. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, we need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Hanford. Right of introduction, waived. Any debate? Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, sorry. Look, first of all, I just wanted
to,
I'll be quick. I wanted to endorse what Mark had said about the rates team. I've helped some people out in this situation, and I found the people weren't keen on dealing with council because of the fear factor, and I found the rates team absolutely superb, and they did exactly. Funny you should say that, Mark, because that's exactly what you have said previously, and that's exactly what I said to them. It sounds really out of character, and so I brought the conversation to you guys, and you came and sorted it out. So, I can vouch for that as a process that works really, really well. They do go above and beyond. From my perspective, from my perspective, I just want to make it clear that from my first view with regards to the rates, because this is a setting of the rates, I'll be abstaining from the vote due to my stance on that, and I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, noting Councillor Halliday's abstention, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Okay, so we have one more report left. But there could be a bit of a conversation around that, and the community boards will want probably an opportunity to present their recommendations. So we'll take a break and we'll come back. We'll come back at 1:45.